Democratic Senator Gary Peters of Michigan. He's chairman of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, chair of the Homeland Security Committee, and a member of the Armed Services Committee. And we have a lot to talk to you about today. We should keep the live pictures up, especially if it gets interesting. So feel free to put them back up and watch the receiving ceremonies begin at the White House as Emmanuel Macron and his wife are going to the White House for the day, and, of course, all in preparation for the first state dinner of this administration at the White House tonight. Senator, you met with the French president yesterday. Tell us about it.
I did. We had a luncheon with him and other members of the delegation, both Democrat and Republican, in the House and Senate. And the president was talking about the need to invest in biodiversity and deal with climate change. There was a discussion about how the United States and France can work together.
All right, very good. And Joe, as we're looking at these live pictures, I'm looking at the really symbolic gifts that each leader is going to be giving the other as part of this grand occasion, including a copy of a movie that President Biden and his wife Jill watched on their first date, which is kind of poignant.
How nice. How nice. Yeah. Well, that'll warm the relationship up a bit between the two countries. Peter Baker, it's been a kind of rough run over the past year and a half. Of course, we go back again to the United States interfering in a nuclear deal between France and Australia. No heads up there led to some really hard feelings. And that's a hole that the Biden administration has been trying to dig out of for some time. And perhaps this is the final step towards healing all wounds.
Well, look, buttered lobster goes a long way, obviously, toward making things better. It'll be a fancy dinner tonight that I think the French will appreciate. But you're right. There obviously are important issues. The submarine deal from last year that soured things from the beginning of the administration. You have today some tension over the incentives that were in the Inflation Reduction Act intended to make a preference made in America electric vehicles. That's something that has the French a little unhappy about it. And there are important differences of opinion about how to handle Ukraine. I think that's really one of the most important issues right now. And the solidarity between the United States and Europe has been one of the most important aspects of the move to counter Russia's invasion. They want to keep on the same page.
Yeah, and Jen Psaki, I know you want to go to Senator Peters with a question, but let me ask you first about the importance of keeping the French, first of all, keeping them happy, but also keeping them shoulder to shoulder with the United States. President Macron has at times made maddening moves, trying to negotiate one-on-one with Vladimir Putin at times. That has left not only the White House, but the rest of the EU flummoxed at his intentions. So them singing off the same song page, music page, obviously critically important when talking about a unified front in Ukraine, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I would say the rift from 14 months ago, yes, the United States definitely made some mistakes. I was there at the time, but it was very embarrassing for the French on the global stage. I mean, they just looked like they were passed over for this major deal. So a big part of this visit for the French is also looking like, look, we're buddies with the United States. Look how close I am, President Macron, with President Biden. They had their double date last night. It looked like they were old friends having after dinner drinks.
And it wasn't the film, it was the soundtrack to the film.
The soundtrack, well, that's even more romantic,
Very
I guess.
romantic.
Right. But to Peter's point, and in yours as well, Joe, I mean, this is a pivotal moment in Ukraine. On the ground right now, the issue, it's harder to fight now because it's muddy. It's going to get colder. So the big issue they're having is this pending energy crisis they're going to have in Ukraine, but also in Europe, where energy prices are skyrocketing. Those are domestic challenges President Macron has to think about, and he has different objectives than the United States. So that's where the rift comes about.
Senator, do you want to chime in on that? Because this is going to be really getting extremely brutal. If it's possible double more brutal than it's already been for the fighters in Ukraine.
Absolutely. No, the winter is going to be very tough.
Ukraine.
The people of Ukraine are really suffering. Many of them without power, without water, basic services. That's why we're sending more resources to fix that and try to bring power and water to more people. But as I mentioned, the Europeans as well are going to feel it more this winter as well. We've got to keep the alliance strong. I think this meeting is so important. French as an ally together, that strength is going to be important for us to get through this crisis and make sure we stand with the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military.
All right. Now, as again, we're watching live pictures from the White House, which is dressed up for Christmas. The official receiving ceremony of French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte, and U.S. President Joe Biden and Jill Biden will be greeting them. Eugene Daniels, if you want to add more to the color here or the conversation at hand, but tonight's a big night symbolically for not only just U.S.-France relations, but when we look at U.S.-Europe, there is kind of a shift in power taking place, subtly, possibly.
No, absolutely. One of the things that's really interesting when you're talking to your sources as something like this is going on, it is taking all hands on deck. People that kind of usually don't have anything to do with decor or decorum, they're dealing with that quite a bit over the last couple of days, weeks, and even some of the months of planning this kind of deal. And when you talk to them about how much it means for the United States to have something like this, there's the pomp and circumstance aspect of it, which is fancy and great. But then, like you guys are talking about, undergirding that are all the really intense geopolitical issues that are going on. You talk about France and what they're trying to get, what the United States is trying to get. It's also really important that this is a president, and Jen, you know this more than any of us, that pulled together that entire European states to come together and fight against Russia and Ukraine, and keeping them together and making sure that this looks like a united front, even though there's these differing issues between the groups.
Yes, and getting the French president and the president of the United States in line as they approach, and in their approach toward Vladimir Putin, will be important moving forward. So we're watching this ceremony, beautiful ceremony, where the White House will welcome the French president and his wife for the official state dinner tonight to the White House today. But Senator Peters, as Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee chairman, I have to say, good job.
Thank you.
But still some work to do in Georgia. And in our last segment, we were talking about how Herschel Walker, well, first of all, the Warnock campaign is letting Herschel Walker speak for himself in their ads, because they're finding that adds value and gives people a sense of what the heck is going on here with this person. Can I really vote for him? Do you think it is planned that Herschel Walker is not appearing much on the campaign trail? Is that going to help him possibly and make it tighter?
I think it is planned, because they know that every time he gets out on the campaign trail, it's not good for him.
They surround him with two people.
Absolutely.
Who don't help the situation. Well,
no, it shows we have a deeply flawed candidate.
So what are the stakes in Georgia, and what's the possibility Warnock can win it?
Well, I feel good. I feel good about where we are. We've got 50. We need to get to 51, which we're working to do. But this is ultimately a campaign about the people of the state of Georgia. Who do they want representing them in Washington, D.C.? Who's going to stand up and speak for Georgians? And I think the contrast is clear. But it's going to be a close race. It's about getting our voters out. We've seen really encouraging early voting, but we've got a lot more work to do.
Yes, Senator, I was going to ask you, we're all looking for tea leaves. Everybody's focused on Georgia right now. So with the early vote numbers, what can you glean from that? What does that tell you about how Warnock's doing versus Walker as we're leading into the final week here?
Well, right now we're pleased with the early voting. It's record voting, as you know. We did have to go to court. The DSCC went to court to make sure there was Saturday voting, which was a great victory to allow people to vote on Saturday. Those numbers are very encouraging, but we still have a long way to go. We know Election Day can be very tough as well. And so we're going to be working on the ground right to the end.
All right, Joe, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Peter Baker about the other side. Peter, we've been talking all morning. I've been talking for 6 years about a Republican Party that is playing a game of subtraction instead of a game of addition in politics, which is, of course, something you never want to do. But we're just so flummoxed by what's happening in the House, what Kevin McCarthy's putting out there. They're talking about investigating how insurrectionists on January the 6th. Rioters, some would say terrorists on January the 6th, are being treated. They're choosing to make that one of their causes. They're talking about investigating the investigators again. Again, this is a Republican Party that got crushed by expectations. Kevin McCarthy thought they're going to win 60 seats. They end up just barely squeaking by in a majority and losing again in the Senate in a year that should have been a red wave. So what are you hearing? Is there any recognition by Republicans on the Hill, especially on the House side, that they have got to stop talking to the smallest fraction of their base and start reaching out to the suburban voters, independent voters, swing voters that they just keep losing every 2 years?
Well, they're torn right now, Joe, of course, between the imperative of doing what you just talked about, going back to the suburban voters that they lost, that they did pretty well with, actually, even just 2 years ago, even as they lost the presidency, and the imperative of Kevin McCarthy needed to keep in line the people on the far right part of his caucus in order to get the speakership. He can't afford to lose more than a handful of votes, and right now he's got 5, I think, declared House Republicans saying they're not going to vote for him, which is not enough to get him the speakership. So he is tacking, obviously, hard to the right, hard toward the more pugilistic version of politics. That's what he thinks is going to get him elected as Speaker. And then, of course, then governing as Speaker or managing the House as Speaker with such a slim majority is going to be really tough. Nancy Pelosi got a tough time as a Democrat doing it. Kevin McCarthy with an even more, ideologically charged caucus, a more Trumpian caucus than it was previously, is going to have an even bigger challenge, it seems like.
And Republicans are going to work on this autopsy that they're doing. We saw that before in 2012, and we saw, well, they listened to it when it came to 2016. But that's one thing that my eyes are on. They say it's going to come out next year, and whether or not they actually pay attention to the lessons they should have learned.